Hey, what's going on, everybody? In today's video, I'm going to be giving my top 10 quarterbacks for the 2023 NFL season. Now, these are preseason rankings. These aren't how I think they're going to do at the end of the 2023 season. These are just the rankings as of the current day. So let's get right into this video. Starting this video off with my honorable mentions, I'm going to have Kyler Murray. Now, Kyler Murray, I think, is still a top 10 talent at the quarterback position. However, he is coming into the season with his ACL torn. And he also didn't have a phenomenal season last year in Arizona, but he can't be put fully to blame. He is one of the most overhated players in the league, in my opinion. But his coaching staff and his defense did him no well, so he's going to come in as an honorable mention. Starting off my top 10, I have two players that are in this contention. The first one is going to be Jared Goff. Now, Jared Goff had a very good season last year. He had great efficiency numbers. He was 5th in QBR with 61.1. He was 6th in passing yards with over 4,000. He had 29 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Now, do I really think Jared Goff is a top 10 talent at the quarterback position? Maybe. He plays in the structure very, very well of the offense, led by offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. But I am going to give Jared Goff his props in this video. He had top 6 in passing yards, top 5 in QBR. He's just good enough in all categories to not inhibit the Lions a lot. He's got good enough accuracy. He's got a good enough arm. He's good enough in the structure. He's a good pocket passer. Overall, Jared Goff is a solid quarterback, and I think he does deserve to be on the top 10 list, but I'm not going to have him any higher than 10. Also tied for 10, I'm going to have Tua Tagovailoa. He broke out last year. He finished 3rd in QBR with a 68.8, and he also finished top 3 in passer rating. He also had 25 passing touchdowns on the season as well. Now, he was helped a lot this year with the addition of Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle had a very big year. Head coach Mike McDaniel looked very comfortable a lot of the year, especially on offense. They're putting out a lot of great schemes, getting guys open, and really using their wide receiver room to their advantage. And I would say Tua Tagovailoa did pretty good within the structure of the offense. He didn't make a ton of mistakes outside of the concussions, really. The concussions were a massive reason why Tua Tagovailoa was not on the field a lot this year. He had 3 separate occasions of concussions. Now, that's the biggest warning flag coming into this year. How is he going to perform after coming back from so many concussions? We saw that last year in the Packers game when he threw 3 interceptions. And I think those questionable interceptions were due to those concussions like later in the year, like against Green Bay. But he does have that elite accuracy and a really nice touch on the ball. So I am going to have him on my top 10 list. Always love to see those efficiency numbers like QBR and passer rating be really high. But those concussions could be a problem for his career. At number 9, I have Geno Smith. Geno Smith broke a bunch of franchise records last year. Franchise record in passing yards, franchise record in completion percentage. He had over 4,000 yards on the season, and he finished 4th in passing touchdowns with 30. Also finished 7th in QBR. He stepped right into Russell Wilson's role, who was traded in the 2022 offseason. Looked very comfortable in this system, had great touch and accuracy on the ball. The offense, after losing Russell Wilson, didn't skip a beat, and that's really attributed to Pete Carroll, head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. Geno Smith has somewhat been a journeyman the last 7 years of his career after being drafted in the 2nd round from the New York Jets. And when you have over 4,000 yards, have 30 touchdowns, and are top 10 in QBR, you're likely to make this list. So I'm going to have him at 9. At number 8, I'm going to have Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson was in the top 5 of the MVP race before he got injured with his ankle. And especially within the first 4 weeks of this season, he was looking like he was in MVP form. The last 2 years, he's only played 12 games, and in this year, he had 17 passing touchdowns, only 7 interceptions. He also finished 9th in QBR. But the big reason why the 2020 MVP Lamar Jackson is not higher on this list like he should be is due to his injuries. Last 2 years, he's only finished the season with 12 injuries, both of them being lower body injuries. He did just re-sign with a massive contract for the Baltimore Ravens, and the Ravens did build around him nicely this offseason with getting Odell Beckham Jr. and then drafting Zay Flowers in the 1st round. But to be higher on this list, Lamar Jackson still needs to show that durability down the season. Tyler Huntley, who somehow made a Pro Bowl, can't be playing crucial games down the season. The Baltimore Ravens have been limping into the playoffs the last 2 years. Now, Lamar did win a playoff game in 2021, but did not play in the playoffs in 2022. And if he did, the Ravens could have beat the Bengals in the playoffs if they had Lamar. But he is still an elite rusher, and I'm going to have him 8 on my list. At number 7, I'm going to have Aaron Rodgers, the new New York Jet. After winning the MVP in 2022, Aaron Rodgers did have a bit of a slip this year. For only the 3rd time in his career, he had double-digit interceptions and had 26 touchdowns through the air. But last year was rough. He finished 26th in QBR. Now, his supporting cast was the worst it's been in a long time. First year without Devonta Adams, who was traded to the Las Vegas Raiders. David Bakhtiari was also not on the field a lot this year. A.J. Dillon had a very inefficient year, and his wide receiver room was full of really young guys like Christian Watts and Romeo Doubs, but he was just traded to the New York Jets this offseason, where he is joining Rookie of the Year Garrett Wilson and rookie stud Breece Hall. We should see a better year from Aaron Rodgers, though at 39 years old, there is a question how much he has left in the tank, but I do think we are going to see a 30-plus touchdown year from Aaron Rodgers. At number 6, I'm going to have Justin Herbert. This is another guy who has top 5 talent at the quarterback position, but did have a down year. Herbert posted the worst numbers of his career last year with over 10 interceptions. He did finish second in the league in passing yards, but in the first year, he finished outside of the top 10 in QBR. Now, I attribute this to his rib injury that he suffered in week 2, and then Brandon Staley just trotting him out every week after the injury without letting him heal properly. The offense as a whole also dealt with a lot of injuries, with his left tackle, Rashawn Slater, injuring his tricep, Mike Williams missing a lot of the year, and then Keenan Allen missing a ton of time with a hamstring strain. Having to play with practice squad receivers and guys that were super low on the depth chart, Justin Herbert was gonna have a bad year, especially with that rib injury. But Justin Herbert did the best he could with an offense that was not dynamic at all. The Chargers ran a lot of basic, really terrible plays that didn't work out a lot. Austin Eckler is severely overused for how good he actually is. But with Kellen Moore as their new offensive coordinator, hopefully the Chargers look better this year. But I also don't really see that happening. Kellen Moore is also not one of the most dynamic offensive coordinators, even though he should be better than Joe Lombardi was last year. And they did draft Quentin Johnson in the first round this year. They need to get some new receivers because Mike Williams only catches jump balls and Keenan Allen is getting really old. And he's definitely lost a few steps. Prayer for Justin Herbert in 2023. Starting off my top 5, I have Trevor Lawrence. And this is a pretty easy one. Who would have thought that if you give Trevor Lawrence a competent head coach with Doug Peterson, who won a Super Bowl with Philly, that Trevor Lawrence would actually be a phenomenal quarterback. The former first overall pick in 2022 had a great year last year, finished top 10 in passing yards, had 25 passing touchdowns to only 8 interceptions, and overall had a really good end to the year after having a rocky start to the season. New additions like Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, and Zay Jones really helped Trevor Lawrence in that account. The Jags' system was just a bunch of slot guys running crossers, out routes, and posts, getting open quickly so that Trevor Lawrence can just make the easy throw. But he did a lot on the ground as well, and as a big body quarterback, he got a lot of work on the goal line. Trevor Lawrence likely makes it back to the playoffs this year. At number 4, I'm going to have Josh Allen, who was on my top 3 last year. I felt way too often Josh Allen put the ball into harm's way and made a lot of rookie decision making. He also had a lot of trouble within his division outside of the Patriots. He didn't have great games in both of the Jets games and had multiple games with multiple interceptions. But with that said, he still had over 4,000 yards and was tied for second with 35 passing touchdowns and was second in QBR. But that 14 interceptions was one of the highest in the league. And a lot of those interceptions were bad ones. They actually impacted the game. They weren't just some garbage time throws. But still, last year, Josh Allen, as always, was very impactful in the run game. But I just really wish the Bills gave him a little bit more help with his wide receiver room. He really only has Stephon Diggs. Gabe Davis really didn't have the breakout like everybody thought. And the offensive line outside of Deion Dawkins was also pretty shaky. But outside of that, he's still a top 5 quarterback. Jalen Hurts had the breakout season for the ages with the Philadelphia Eagles last year, making the Super Bowl. In a historic year, he finished top 10 in passing yards, top 5 in QBR, had only 6 interceptions, which was bottom 5 in the league, had 22 passing touchdowns, but he had 13 touchdowns on the ground, which was tied for second in the league just as a quarterback. The addition of A.J. Brown was humongous for Jalen Hurts' development. He really had an X receiver and a number 1 receiver that he could consistently throw to. And with an offense that has the number 1 offensive line in the league and has A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith in it with Dallas Goedert, who's a top 5 tight end, you have a lot of weapons, but you also can't make those mistakes. Jalen Hurts never held back the Eagles. He even elevated them to the next level with his rushing ability. And in the pass game, he really solved that inaccuracy issue that he had in his first year. Hurts had a 66% completion percentage and was probably the best deep thrower in the league. He was fitting a lot of deep balls to A.J. Brown in very tight windows. But most importantly, Jalen Hurts led the number 1 rushing attack in the NFL. But what really proved to me why Jalen Hurts is the top 3 quarterback was his Super Bowl performance. He had 4 touchdowns. He almost had 400 yards on the game. And he was a one-man show in the Super Bowl. He finished top 2 in MVP voting, and I'm going to have him top 3 on my list. I have Joe Burrow coming in at second on my list. And Joe Burrow is kind of looking like the next Tom Brady form of quarterback in the AFC. Well, why am I comparing him to Tom Brady? Well, I'm comparing their play style. Tom Brady always got the ball out very fast, and Joe Burrow got the ball faster out than anybody in the league. He had a phenomenal year last year, finished 5th in passing yards, had 35 touchdowns, where it was tied for second. He was top 10 in passer rating and QBR. Did have a little high number of interceptions with 12, but a lot of that was early in the season. Joe Burrow did not make a lot of mistakes in the second half of the season, and also made it back to the AFC Championship game, where he did lose to the Chiefs, who went on to win the Super Bowl, but he was in the Super Bowl in 2022. But you can't really compete with Joe Burrow's accuracy and his touch on the ball. He's a very smart decision maker in the pocket, probably the best pure pocket passer in the league. His offensive line was, yet again, very shaky, allowed a lot of sacks last year. And he even dealt with some adversity with Jamar Chase going out with an ankle injury for 4 weeks. But he does still have that awesome supporting cast with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. And the Bengals still have a great defense. But Joe Burrow is an absolute threat, and I think he might win the MVP next year. And then the obvious number one pick for this list is going to be Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the league. He had a historic year last year. He was first in passing yards, first in touchdowns, first in QBR, first in passer rating. He was awarded with the 2022 regular season MVP. Even with an ankle injury throughout the entire postseason, Patrick Mahomes was able to grit his way to another Super Bowl championship in Super Bowl 53, where he brought home the Super Bowl 57 MVP. I mean, there's no quarterback we've ever seen like Patrick Mahomes with his out-of-structure ability, with his accuracy, with his arm strength. Mahomes is the easy selection to be the best quarterback in the NFL. There's nobody other like him. He's got a Hall of Fame career ahead of him. If you made it this far in the video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Follow along the rest of the series that I'm going to be posting on my YouTube channel, and I'll see you in the next one.